Can I ask you how much satisfaction you take from this, given that it is non-binding?
Well, we were very pleased with the handing down of the decision today, the advisory opinion. It really makes it clear that action on climate change by states, whether according to the treaties, the climate change treaties, the Climate Change Convention, the Paris Agreement, or international customary law, is a legal obligation. And so that removes a lot of the excuses that we're hearing from high-emitting states, particularly in the COPs, about whether they need to take action or whether it's a voluntary commitment. The court made it very clear that it's in fact under international customary law, as well as under all the human rights conventions and the UN Charter itself. This is a binding legal obligation on states, and it gives avenue for countries like Vanuatu and other vulnerable countries to have more leverage in their discussions and even to take more drastic action to see climate action being taken by the high-emitting states.
So let me just ask you, because we described, a Pacific island nation, obviously you're low-lying. What is the immediate threat to Vanuatu and other island nations like yours? So we understand.
So in the Pacific, there are low-lying nations like Tuvalu and Kiribati, which are atoll nations where the maximum height above sea level is about 2 meters. So these countries face existential threat. With sea level rise, they will disappear. And so the International Court of Justice, in advisory opinion, made a very important point. It said, if at any point in the future, the baselines from which the boundaries of states are drawn disappear, it doesn't matter because these states are already established under international law. So that was a huge win in this ICJ advisory opinion. Mm-hmm. It gives great weight to these countries who are seeking to preserve their statehood in the face of the whole country disappearing. But also in countries like Vanuatu, which are more high, we are high, we have volcanic mountains and so on, we still face sea level rise, we face increasing intensity and frequency of tropical cyclones. Now we have reached beyond Category 5. We have gone to categories that don't exist in science. We also have extreme weather events that are causing large areas of our country to be uninhabitable. And so for us, we're actually experiencing loss and damage. It's beyond adaptation. We've done all we can to adapt, but we don't have the resources to do so. So this advisory opinion will help us to seek the international cooperation we need to get the resources we need to find ways to provide a better future for our people.
Can I ask you just to be very, very realistic? Because you can see that certainly with the new US administration, even the EU, all these nations and blocs that have talked a lot about, growing back green and really taking care of the climate and doing what they can, seem to be on the retreat right now. There are other financial issues. The US, for itself, has pulled out of all sorts of climate and multilateral accords and rolled back the clock on institutions around the climate and environment in its own country. So where do you see the hope coming from, even by using this law? Because it seems to be a major crisis point right now.
Well, the reality is that climate change affects everybody. And increasingly, we will see this happen all across the world. And a good example is in the last decade. It's the first time ever, the last 10 years have been the hottest years, each one on record ever. And the last one has been the hottest ever. And we're seeing everything happening all over the world. We're seeing what happened here in The Hague is a result of a global youth movement for climate justice. And this particular decision today gives a lot of hope to the youth because they were the ones who pushed for this advisory opinion. And the fact that it's been so strong in their favour will galvanise them, as well as wider civil society, to put much more pressure on governments to take real action in the face of a reality of increasing devastation caused by climate change for every country. So the reality will force countries to come to accept what this advisory opinion has just said.
Can I just dig deeper into the youth movement that you described? Because essentially, this case has apparently been about 6 years in the making. It was first brought to you by, as you say, a group of 27 students from the University of the South Pacific. This was back in 2019. How does that work? What did they say? How did they petition? What had they done to make, to reach this judgment today?
So they came with this idea that they were law students. The single best legal remedy to the climate crisis was to get an advisory agreement from the ICJ. So it was this pie in the sky idea. They came to see Vanuatu. We agreed to take it up and push it up to the international level. And then this whole global movement, the Global Climate Justice Youth Network, developed, advocating in all their different countries with their governments to support it. And what happened last year in the General Assembly of the United Nations was that unanimously, every country in the world agreed to refer this question to the ICJ. And that was historic. That was the first time that the General Assembly has unanimously referred a question to the ICJ. It's never happened before in history. Mm-hmm. And then today we also saw the advisory opinion being handed down also unanimously. And that's very rare for the ICJ also. So it shows this momentum and this common idea that we need to find some way to get us beyond this point where we are not addressing the climate crisis as we should.